Hey, brand builder, Rory Vaden here. Thank you so much for taking the time to check out this interview. As always, it's our honor to provide it to you for free. And wanted to let you know there's no big sales pitch or anything coming at the end. However, if you are someone who is looking to build and monetize your personal brand, we would love to talk to you and get to know you a little bit and hear about some of your dreams and visions and share with you a little bit about what we're up to see if we might be a fit. So if you're interested in a free strategy call with someone from our team, we would love to hear from you. You can do that at brandbuildersgroup.com/podcall, brandbuildersgroup.com/podcall. We hope to talk to you soon.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Influential Personal Brand. AJ Vaden here. I have a longtime friend who is on the show today, Shawn Hanks. I'm going to formally introduce him in just a sec, but I want you to know who this episode is for and why you should stick around and listen to it. Number one, this is for anyone who is on the path to desiring to become a highly paid professional speaker. That's who this episode is really built for. If you want to speak occasionally, probably not the episode for you. This is built for the person who goes, I have a message to share and I have a passion for sharing it on stages all over the world. I want this to be the primary part of my business and I want to be a highly paid professional speaker. If that's you, this is an episode you cannot, absolutely do not want to miss. Now, what are we going to talk about? We're going to talk about what it takes to become a highly paid professional speaker. And most importantly, how do you get on all those stages that you so desire to be on? Because there's lots of different ways to do it. And working with a bureau is one of those, which we're going to talk a lot about today. It's not the only one, but it is one that definitely helps pave the path. But in order to do that, there's some things you got to do before you get on those stages. So without further ado, let me introduce you to the CEO of Premier Speakers Bureau. Shawn has been in the Speakers Bureau world for almost 20 years, if not over 20 years. He was also the most recent past president of the International Association of Speakers Bureaus, which is just a real fancy word of saying he knows a lot about this industry. He knows a lot about this. But I also love the fun facts. I love that you're an avid sports fan. But I got to know, like, who's your NFL team? Like, who's your favorite team?
Dallas Cowboys.
Oh,
Heather and I went
Dallas.
to a game last week. We watched them beat the Rams. Hey, it's fun. The Cowboys are great until they're not, and it just breaks my heart every year. Yeah.
Oh, I love that. Also, Shawn lives here in Nashville, as Rory and I do. So it's also great to also get to have fellow Nashvillians on the show. And I got to tell you this before we get started, speaking of football, like my two little ones, I have a 4-year-old and a 6-year-old, both boys. And just this year, they have discovered a deep passion for football. And it's like, we love football, but
That's fun.
we don't have a deep passion for it. But my 4-year-old got himself a pair of football gloves, like, like
I love it.
but
yeah, probably receiver gloves. Yeah,
receiver gloves. There you go. That's what they're called. I don't even know, but he sleeps in them.
Love it.
He wears them to basketball practice. He wears them to school. He wears them everywhere he goes. I'm like, you're going to have the softest, most moisturized hands you've ever seen the light of day. They are obsessed with football, and they don't care what the teams are, only what the mascots are. So our house is designated as fans of the Jacksonville Jaguars and the Miami Dolphins. So
yeah, they're two great teams. You can go to
so funny. All right. Well, now we got to talk business. So, Shawn, help everyone get to know just a little bit about you and Premier Speakers. Like, for those who are listening, who are going, what's a bureau? What do those people do? What is a bureau? What is Premier? And how did you get into this industry? And how have you stayed in it for so long?
Yeah. Well, thank you, AJ. It's great. Always fun to see you, and your energy comes through the screen. I love that. Bureau is, if you don't know what a speaker's bureau is, join the crowd. I didn't know what a speaker's bureau was in October of 2000, so 23 years ago. Let's not do the math. I didn't know what a speakers bureau was. That's an old, dusty term that essentially means we do speaker representation, right? We are the organizations that, especially larger conferences, corporate groups, come to a speakers bureau to say, hey, I have 4 slots, and these are the types of content I want to fill. This is what I do want. This is what I don't want. Premier in particular, and you mentioned IASB, which is a great organization, International Association of Speakers Bureaus. I am plugged into that group, so I probably know more about speakers bureaus than I should, except for doing market competitor research. But it's a small industry. There's about 120 speakers bureaus. Most of those are very small, 1-2 person shops that really started doing event management and then event production, and then slid into the speakers bureau world because they really enjoyed being the liaison with the speakers. And they're probably 4 to 5 that are significant in size and would own a significant part of the industry. PSB in particular, last year we worked with about 2,000 events. We have 9 agents on our team. They are siloed, so we have one agent who only handles healthcare, right? So when a healthcare client calls, or a hospital, he can speak with, he understands their pain points, he understands their jargon. So we have been intentional at Premier. We'll celebrate 30 years next year of building. Thank you. Building what we call sectors. So we have one agent that only handles education. We do a lot of work in the K through 12 arena. And if you call from a school district or any kind of education group, you're always going to end up talking to Carl, because he understands what your pain points are. He understands that in particular, you always pay net 30. Most groups don't do that. All those little intricacies that you can really glean from working with the same types of clients over and over again. Expertise, ultimately. But our job, most people assume our job is to just book speakers. And that is the end product. But I always say we are in consultancy more than anything else, and really risk mitigation. When a large corporation calls us, or a large association, and says, hey, this is the type of speaker we're looking for, or often it's, here are the 3 types of speakers we want. We need a headliner who's going to capture attention. We're willing to spend X number of dollars. Then we think this is going to be a hot topic. Let's call it AI. I mean, it's a hot topic for today. We need someone on the stage who can cover that content. And then we want someone who can do this and check these certain boxes. They most often call us with very specific criteria of, these are the things. They most often don't have a name. They're not calling to say, we want AJ on this date, right? They're calling us, and the consultancy is really what we're selling. We're risk mitigation. They may book 4 speakers this year. We booked 2,000 events last year. So they understand we aren't going to book a speaker for them and with them who isn't going to be literally world-class. I mean, just show up, crush it, be amazing on stage. So there's no risk I'll say that. Ideally, there's no risk in working with a bureau, because we're bringing them the cream of the crop. And we've done all of the hard work of selecting from the 1,000 speaker submissions that we've seen in the last year. We have gleaned the 10 or 20 or 30 or 40 that we know are going to be amazing. And that ultimately, that's what a speakers bureau is. We are here to service our end clients. When we say client, and that's a term of art in our industry, we are talking specifically Premier Speakers Bureau. We are talking about an event planner who has a problem to solve. And we are in the problem solving business. Our solution happens to be amazing speakers that they say, we need to communicate a message this year for this thing. We say we know the person to do that. Now, typically they don't want a proposal with one person. They require of us a proposal with 4 or 5, 6 suggestions. And we can dig into that a little bit, because that's a very different buying process than if they go directly to a speaker's website, right? That's a step prior to what most speakers experience when they're working directly with a client. But our job at that point, make great suggestions. The client, they end up in a boardroom somewhere with a search committee or a team who's playing in the conference. They select from that list and probably come back to us. So we massage that ultimately. But at the end of the day, it turns into, is the speaker available on this date? Yes. We go to contract with the end client, go to contract with the speaker. We have 9 of those agents. We have 5 people on our event logistics team. They grab the event. They do all of the event logistics. They do all of the speakers' event logistics, airfare, car service, all of the details to get the speaker from home to the event and back. And then we have a full accounting team. We collect all the funds, guarantee all the payment to the speaker. So there's very little risk for the speaker. We do work on a commission structure, so they're paying for those services. But ultimately, it's solving the problem of what content do you need on the stage, event planner. That's where it starts.
Yeah. So I love that you said that, because I haven't heard that so clearly stated. It's like we're risk mitigation for our clients. We're the first round filter of all of the speakers out there who fit X criteria of going, hey, we're going to filter these. We're going to, mitigate any risk. So if someone doesn't get on stage and say something crazy, or this isn't very good, because at the end of the day, that makes the meeting planner look bad and makes the company look bad. But then also that's a lot of wasted time, because these events are very expensive to put on and they're paying high dollar for these people. Now, what would you say is the benefit of a speaker working with you as a bureau?
Assuming the speaker is with the right bureau. And when I say right, every company ends up with a clientele that looks like them as a company, right? And whether that's intentional or unintentional, Premier has been blessed with a lot of organic growth over the years. But much of that is the speakers that we select to represent attract a certain type of clientele, right? So then we go find speakers who are attractive to that type of clientele. That grows. So our client base, somewhat intentional, somewhat just by the nature of how business works, we over time end up with a certain type of clientele, and then we are looking for speakers to service those groups of clients. So there is a step there of, I have seen many times, and we've been guilty of it. We say, hey, this speaker is very interesting. We think it could be a good fit, but we end up misaligned because we don't have the right clientele to select them. But when there's a great marriage there of a speaker working with a bureau, the opportunity there is speaker X. If you get in front of 10 event planners, and I say in front of, if you have contact with 10 event planners and 2 or 3 of them book you, right? Let's say you got a 30% close rate. Well, we can put you in front of 100 event planners, or 1,000. 10,000 is a big number, but it's just the scale of opportunity. Even if that close rate goes down, you still have massive opportunity. There are assumptions with alignment there, obviously, but when it works well, it's a scale that most speakers are not able to build on their own, or choose not to. I mean, ultimately, I mentioned all of our staff with 24 people on our team. For a speaker to go hire someone, okay, I want you on the phone all day, every day, talking about me to clients. I need someone to run a business. I need, maybe a COO to manage all of this. And I need someone in accounting. It's staffing up becomes a significant amount of overhead. Bureaus, we do sell services and provide services to speakers, but it eliminates for most speakers the requirement of having a full back office.
Yeah. What I've always said is, just being honest, we've always had a love-hate relationship with bureaus, because we are salespeople. It's like we've always found ourselves, it's like we're great at pitching ourselves and getting ourselves on stages until you run into a slew of clients that are like, oh, we love you, would love to book you. Let me contact my bureau.
Yeah.
You need to contact the bureau. I'm talking to you right now. And it's like, but I think that's one of the benefits for speakers, is just understanding there is a whole world of clients who will not book you without going through their bureau because of that risk mitigation process.
Right.
It's that they want to know that you've gone through the ringer with the bureau too, before they put you on their stage. And I would say I think it's a huge benefit of just going, if you have a great relationship with a bureau, one, access is a big deal. Like, you're going to get access to people who would never book you direct. They're just not going to do it. It's not what they do.
Right.
But then 2, it's like, if you don't have relationships with bureaus, even if you're not exclusive, you're going to be competing with them. Right. And those have established relationships where even if they like you, they know these other people really well. So there's pros and cons to all the things, but I think a lot of people who want to be highly paid professional speakers, they want to do it now. And there's a process. of how do you raise your fees and how do you get to become that person who is booked on stages where people are calling you or bureaus are calling you versus you calling them. So I'd love to hear from your perspective of, booking 2,000 events last year is insanity, right? That's so many. That's so many. That's what, 4 a day, for 3.5 a day. It's a ton. But also being in the industry for so long, like, what are people looking for? And so I want to talk about this in 3 different ways. What are they looking for in terms of the content? Like what's trending, what's hot, and I think there's just evergreen. Like people are always going to want leadership. They're always going to want culture. There's always some of those things, right? But then there's new topics like AI, right? So I'd love to talk about content. The second is, what are the assets that a speaker needs in order to get booked, right? So we need demo video, but any footage isn't good footage, right? So like what type of footage? And then also like a speaker press kit or a website, like what's the formula of this is the set of assets you need if you're really going after this. And then the last thing is, what does it take to work with a bureau? Right? I think that's important. So let's start with content. Like just thinking of, some people have great ideas, but are people going to pay 10, 20, 30, $40,000 for an hour?
Right. Yeah. And that's a great question. You described it perfectly, AJ. There are certain elements of content that will never grow old. Leadership is one of them. Teamwork, you're right, culture. And how we see that play out in the market is often a client will call and say, hey, we need a speaker who, I mentioned AI earlier. As we sit here in November of 2023, that's a hot topic. It may not be 2 years from now, but it is today. And I'll come back to that in a second. But often they'll say, hey, even if you're an AI speaker, we want you to hit on AI. We want you to be the expert. Ideally, you've written a book on it. You've been on TV and they've put your name, AJ, expert in AI, right? But the reality is they also want you to hit on some of those evergreen topics. So event planners will say like, oh, we want that AI speaker to be great. Can they also hit on leadership? And so there is kind of this combination of your content. But that isn't to say you do want to be known for something. Now, what that thing is, social media 8-10 years ago was the thing. And I remember so many speakers saying, I have to overnight reinvent myself as a social media speaker. The problem with that is the next day, you have, let's make up a number, 1,000 speakers who overnight became experts on social media. So there immediately becomes a glut in the market. But there was opportunity there. The problem is, if you're chasing content in that way, it is really hard to read what's in the future, right? Like to guess, okay, where's it going to be in a year? I've always encouraged speakers, yes, be smart. Leadership, teamwork, culture. There's some content that will never grow old. The thing that you're going to care about in 3 to 5 years, because we're talking about what you guys do at Brand Builders, like figure out what you were great at and like you own it, but you got to live it, right? So if you're picking something because you hope it'll just capture the market, my argument is you're going to hate that content in 6 months because you're trying to fall in love with something that you don't love, right? So, but everyone, if you're watching this and you're passionate and you answered the question that you tossed out on the very front end, AJ, or definition of this is who this conversation is for. If you're in that small segment of people, the thing that you're passionate about, and make that your own. Now, be smart, obviously. DEI was a very hot conversation topic and keynote topic 2 years ago, last year. But we've seen a number of DEI speakers start to see their business slow because a lot of companies will say, we had that content last year. And they haven't devalued it, but they can't do that content every single year. So the reality is the market, there's less opportunity for that specific content. So you mentioned culture. That is an evergreen topic. Very clever, gifted DEI speakers will pivot. They don't change their content significantly, but you rebrand it. Instead of DEI, it's culture. And those are the same thing, but how you brand it matters in the market over time. So that's a long answer to what is the hot content out there. you defined three that will never go away, and you as a speaker have to lean into those and be able to answer the question, hey, is there some leadership content in everything you do? Yes. You have to be able to honestly answer that with a yes, and then frame your content. Again, if it was DEI last year, you read the room and say, hey, the opportunities are lessening for that content. Okay, I'm going to reframe it as culture. The same with social media. Like I said, 10 years ago, overnight, we had 1,000 experts. But today, we haven't been asked about a social media speaker in probably 5 years. So you have to know that content has faded. And I will say there are, and you guys probably unpack this a bit with brand builders, there's certain content that is viewed. No one sits down and defines this, I don't think, in a spreadsheet. Leadership content, you can be a $40,000 leadership speaker. You will never find, well, I take that back. It would be very difficult to find a $40,000 social media speaker.
Mm-hmm.
Event planners think, oh, that's like $7,500 content. So there are kind of levels in the market's mind. No one chooses it intentionally. It's just kind of what the market does with the content. If you're heavy on entertainment, you don't, unless you're a celebrity, the market doesn't pay heavily for entertainment. If you want to do magic, they use that as a vehicle as part of a keynote. And this sounds like such splitting hairs. You can be a $20,000 magician who uses that as a vehicle to teach great content.
Mm-hmm.
If you do magic and also happen to speak, they may pay you $7,500 for that, whereas flip the description of it, you may get 20 for it. So some of that, and you figure out what those levers are over time, but being intentional about how you frame it, making certain there is a market for the thing that you're doing is important.
I think that's so, so important. As you were talking, I was thinking about speakers like Eric Wall, right? And
amazing. Yeah.
He's an artist and does his artistry, but it's woven into a more articulate message with content. Mm-hmm. There's so many others that I could think of right now, but there's one I'm thinking of. It'll come to me in just a second. Dan Thurman.
Yes, he's amazing. He's terrific gymnast.
Balance and productivity and making it all come together. But yeah, he does acrobats, and it's like, that's entertainment, but the content is just as good.
Right. Yes.
Versus
if you ask the person when they walked out of that, there's 1,000 people in a conference room in Vegas, hey, what did Dan Thurman do? They would tell you some cool stuff. He can do things that I could never do physically on a stage, but that's only to capture your attention. It's kind of the conceit or the trick in the thing to teach you something. If you're leaning on the thing to be the thing, then you're a gymnast.
That's right.
If you're just using that to communicate an idea, then you're a true artist. I mean, you've hacked that's the professional part of professional speaking. You found a way to capture people's attention, but then ultimately teach them amazing content. It has to be the end result.
That's such the key part of it in that entertainment aspect. It's like you're only using it to catch their attention to deliver the great message. Now, we talked about a couple, because I thought that's really fascinating, something that you said. It's like, categorically speaking, there is a, perceived price value on certain categories of content. Mm-hmm. And like, I know that inherently, but it's good to articulate, like, you're not going to find many $40,000 social media speakers.
Right. There you go.
That's true. That's very true. And so I would love to talk about, did I miss any? Because we said leadership, we said kind of culture, we said teamwork. I threw in sales, but I don't know. I believe that's evergreen. Like, everyone's looking at, how do we keep revenues, top line high, bottom line high? Are there any other categories that you're like, yeah, these are evergreen? People are always going to be asking for these types of speakers.
Yeah, that's a great question. Those you just described, and sales is definitely one. And I would pause for a second to describe the types of the buyers that are coming to speakers bureaus most often are, and you touched on this earlier, are larger corporations, associations. There's I think the last number was like 26,000 associations out there. Not all of them can afford a $40,000 speaker, but they are all required by charter to do a conference. So
Right.
they're all doing a conference on some level. So those are the types of clients who are most often working with speakers bureaus. So we do our data points are within a certain type of buyer. There are certainly other buyers out there who we don't bump into, but those that you hit on are those described really well. And sales is corporations will do a sales training, or they'll bring in their sales leaders. Associations don't lean heavily into sales because unless they're a specific type of association. Big picture, sales would be probably a B option for them, and there are a lot of options beneath that. But leadership, teamwork, culture, those things that, especially in the association world, the only thing these people have in common, the 5,000 people in the Vegas or Orlando ballroom, is that they're all in one industry together. Beyond, and they're all, but some may run a company, some may work at a company, some people may, they may pick up the trash at a company. So the event planners are looking for content that can resonate with the CEO, the person who answers the phone, people in sales, people in logistics. Associations have to bring in broad content because of the types of attendees that are in the room.
What about customer experience?
Yes, that is content that we would book from time to time. That is not, I wouldn't say that would be a content where this is a home run every single time. And customer experience, customer service, those would almost be interchangeable. I like customer experience is better terminology today. Customer service was definitely at 5 to 10 years ago, or some amount of time ago. I would say if that is your only content, you are bumping up against a ceiling on some level. Now, what that number is a guess, right? But you won't find many customer experience $50,000 speakers, but you can find quite a few at 15, right, or 12.5.
So fascinating. I love this conversation. Last question. I'm like, what am I going to think of? What about like marketing or branding?
Mm-hmm. Branding is definitely the terminology you would want to use in the corporate event space rather than marketing. Yes, that's great content. And I'd probably align that or put that in a similar plateau with customer experience. That is content that event planners will pay for. Wouldn't be the top echelon type of a fee structure. But with the caveat, again, if that's something you're passionate about, you can make that, you can build an amazing career as a customer experience or marketing or branding speaker. Don't let me suggesting there are limits to it make you go, oh, do I want to invest my time in this? If that's something you're passionate about and you have the silver bullet idea that you've seen work and you've led a team and it works and you taught it to other teams and it works, there's always value in that thing. And every market has a cap. But that's the question I would ask, and the answer would be, yeah, that's probably a $15,000 to $20,000 keynote, somewhere in that range.
No, I think it's really good because it's, again, it's like I'm just kind of like listing these out, like these higher level evergreen topic categories: leadership, culture, teamwork, and you can differentiate and position within those high level categories that really, at the end of the day, if like you want your fees to grow, it's like it's going to have to reach things on that more general, widespread nature of leadership. But
Sure.
then, yeah, you can have an amazing career in the sales, branding, marketing, customer experience space, but there's going to be a ceiling at some point, unless you can figure out how do we weave that into one of these more overarching categories,
something larger,
more culture, leadership. But I think that's really important, because sometimes just knowing that helps a lot of like how you position. And if you don't know those nuances of the industry, you're stuck before you even get started, because it's nuanced. And I think that's really important. So I love that in terms of like content, just categorically speaking. And I think that's really, really important. Now let's talk about assets, right? So let's assume you are like, barrier to entry. Like, you have to have a great speech. You have to be a great presenter. So let's just pretend that everyone who's listening is, you have great content, and you're great on stage, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like if you're listening and you're going, oh, I'm not sure, then you're not ready for this conversation. Like we need to go back and go, let's ensure that your content is tight and your presentation skills are tight, right? Let's ensure that first, but let's assume we got that covered. Mm-hmm. What are the assets when it comes to websites, demo videos, press kits? Like what is really being used? What is necessary? What's essential?
Yeah, great question. And the starkiest thing you'll hear me say today, AJ, hopefully, is when speakers say to me, man, every time I walk off stage, they tell me I'm the best speaker ever, or I crushed it. Hopefully I don't always say it, but I do think, yeah, congratulations. Like that's what a professional speaker should do. Like if you're a professional speaker, you should never say, yeah, I laid an egg today. I mean, it's going to happen, but killing it on stage is the barrier to entry to be a professional speaker. You said that well. I'm being redundant, but that is the expectation. If you're being paid $15,000, that's a significant amount of money. But also, if a company is putting their 500 employees in a room for sitting idle by productivity standards for an hour, the cost to the company is literally probably another 15, and depending on the size, could be hundreds of thousands of dollars for that hour. So be amazing. Be amazing. Assets are the thing that I try to frame it this way instead of just thinking them as marketing. You get to answer questions that you will never get asked because they're going to make a decision about you without asking you certain questions. Mm-hmm. And it also allows you to put yourself in that conference room that I described earlier where, they order pizza and they throw 5 speakers on a screen and look at them and compare them and know that you're very rarely being considered in a vacuum. So it's not just speaker X, do we like them or not? It is most often speaker X. I like that they did this, but I'll poke fun at myself. We've had 3 middle-aged white guys in a row the last 3 years. We don't want to do a 4th thing. They really do have to nuance and start to compare and contrast. Well, this speaker is 10% funnier. I mean, they have to measure things. And the first part of the job is to eliminate options, right? So they're looking for things to go, okay, well, this speaker says they're the most amazing branding speaker ever, but their video looks like it was shot 10 years ago. Like that, of course. I mean, you wouldn't buy if your person you're buying a car from drives a horrible car and knows nothing about cars, and you go, I probably don't know what they're talking about. So if you have an expertise, obviously you got to crush it in that expertise. But headshot, I'll come back to video because video is the silver bullet in the speaking world. I'm convinced of that. A professional headshot. And I always suggest to speakers or lean into, it's easy if you come out of the corporate world or you've had success, you built a company and sold it. You've always been branded as a certain thing in that space. In the speaking space, what you're selling is I can get on your stage and communicate an idea maybe better than anyone else for 60 minutes or 50 minutes, whatever it is. So you have to change your mindset from I built this company and it's who I am, and being very biographically focused. Think about the event planner who's sitting in their cubicle considering 4 other speakers. They're looking for something a little bit different in that biography. It's not just essentially your Wikipedia page, right? It really is like, how are you bringing your expertise to my room of 500 people who may or may not want to be there and moving the needle for our company? Still not sure about that. Oh, sorry. Siri just heard me. But so keynote description, so headshot, no brainer, 300 DPI, great, high resolution. Spend money on that. If it's a friend with an iPhone, that's not going to cut it. I mean, you spend money on
selfies.
It. Brand builders.
Selfies.
Yeah.
My selfies.
AJ, call AJ. She can help you out. I'm sure brand builders can assist with that.
So funny.
The keynote descriptions are something to harken back to. We were talking about it earlier. Own a certain piece of content, but a keynote description is ultimately you're describing what your brand is in 1 or 2 words. Colon, here's a short description of how I'm going to move the needle for your team. And then a description of what they are buying. I mean, they're buying a product. We're paying you money for 60 minutes to come communicate an idea. this keynote description describes how you are going to, what that thing is and how you're going to do it. The title describes what it is. The keynote description describes how you're going to do it. Don't be afraid to have 2 or 3 versions of. It's almost disingenuous to say, okay, sales colon whatever that thing is, and this is for IT companies, and then the same thing but for healthcare companies. That doesn't scare off buyers. They want to, if they're a healthcare company and you have a keynote description describing your content in their space, that's a good thing. That tells them you know enough about the healthcare industry that you have content, that you've taken your content and specifically built it for their audience, right? So don't be afraid to have 2 or 3 keynotes that look similar, but are targeted towards different types of organizations. So keynote descriptions are important. Reviews are crucial because, and I jokingly say this often, if you have I'm going to use Magic Johnson. If you know Magic Johnson and he says, AJ's my buddy, she's the best speaker I've ever met, you're going to love her. That's awesome at a dinner party. And that would impress me. I'm a huge basketball fan. Event planners, in the moment that they are buying, are not impressed by big names. Remember, risk mitigation. The most valuable thing from a review point of view in that buying moment is someone like me in my chair used you as a speaker and you crushed it, and they wrote a review saying, hey, I brought speaker X in, they crushed it on stage, they moved the needle, these metrics, whatever that is. So big names are great. I would drop 1 or 2 on my website. Way more importantly is event planner. Stacy from Prudential is very valuable when Steve at Allstate is considering you, right? Because these are lateral competitors, and they're saying, we tried it, it worked, so they're going to try it also. Video, we touched on it a little bit. I can't tell you how often I'll get a video, because I've got so many friends and buddies that are in the speaking world. They'll text me a video, hey, here's here's a clip, man, this joke I told or this story I told crushed, right? I watched the video. No, it doesn't, because they are remembering, and it breaks my heart. I hate to say, no, it doesn't, but they are remembering the audience reaction. AJ, you've been on a ton of stages. You have a joke or you have a story that always works, right? You remember it, but if you don't have video of the audience reaction, so I, as a viewer, sitting at my desk watching a video, if I can't see the audience react, then you just get whatever you get from me, and I'm probably distracted. So audience reaction is one element that speakers, very well-paid professional speakers, forget to include that in their preview videos. And then when we consumers see it, we go, no, that joke wasn't nearly as funny as you thought it was, because in my cubicle, it's not funny. It's probably funny when 1,000 people are slapping their knees. So I would say video, it's a constant discussion in the market. What's the best length of a video? Probably 5 to 7 minutes. If you've got a couple of really killer clips that push it to 10, just know that most event planners are considering you won't watch 10 minutes, but they'll skip through a video. But it needs to punch, and it needs to, if you've got 2 or 3 stories that are your fastballs, include those in there. And I would say one little hack that I always suggest to speakers is your video is never a finished product. You're going to tell that story often on stages. If you tell it in Tulsa and it crushes, get that video and replace that story in your current preview video. So don't ever think of your video as being finished. Oh, I'm going to do a new video next year. You should do a new video next year. But while you're waiting for that, go ahead and keep refreshing those different clips as you're crushing it on stages around the world for now, and then always be thinking, what's my next video going to be?
Yeah, so I've got a question for you specific to this video thing, which is, how much of the video should be you on stages? Because a lot of the videos I see today are more like sizzle commercials, and they have B-roll footage, or there's storytelling components. And should there be testimonials in the video? Should there be client logos? Like, if you were just like high level, it's like if it's 5 minutes, I want to see this many minutes of you just on stage. The rest of it, save it for something else.
Right. That is a great question because it's a moment in time question. A few years ago, a couple of speakers realized like everyone's videos look the same. And this is generalities, but pretty close a few years ago. It was pre-COVID, so we'll call it 5 years ago. Some speaker said everyone's videos look the same, and they started to do some videos, and I can mention names and we'll talk about them offline. I loved it. They kind of reinvented the sizzle reel or the preview video world, and it became the videos that we've all seen now and been a part of probably helping make, which is you follow them to the stage and they're standing and they look at the camera and say like, this is going to be great. And you watch them walk on stage and crush it. That total overnight, it elevated the expectation from the viewer side of the videos. Because it used to be, okay, I'm probably going to do some talking head to introduce myself. Here's 3 clips of me on CNN and Fox News, like, you know, quick clips. And then here's 3 clips of me speaking. Now we kind of have almost movie production quality videos, right? I think the market has adjusted to that where a large number of speakers have that more kind of movie production. So it's like the rubber band thing. I think it will stretch and pull back. And event planners, they're a cynical bunch because we make them a cynical bunch, because I always say hyperbole is the natural language of our industry. Like everything is the best ever. Every speaker is the best ever. So everyone's
an expert.
Everyone's an expert. Words might have less value, and hand up, like we're all guilty of that, right? But there probably will be a bit of a return to, hey, I don't want it to be a hype video for you. Like I need content. I'm making a decision on, can you do the thing I want you to do? So as a long way to say, I don't know that will ever go away, because the production value expectation has increased. If it's shot from a shaky camera or one camera from the back of the room, that's not going to cut it for you. If you expect to grow your career, you do have to invest in an additional camera, audience reaction shots that I mentioned earlier. But does it have to be Jerry Bruckheimer, type of camera work? No. But I would say if I had $10,000 to invest in my video tomorrow and I was a speaker, I would lean heavily into production, and then you want to answer the question, why are you an expert? Why should I give you 60 minutes of my people's time? You want to answer that in the first few seconds. So if you're on CNN and they're holding your book up and it says you're an expert, definitely include that. But you want to answer that question in 10, 15 seconds and then get to you on stage speaking, and not to dig in to be boring with it, but a couple of basic items are, you want more than one camera. You want more than one scene. So if it's you wearing the same dress or the same suit in all 3 clips, the question the event planner will never say, have you done this a lot, right? But you're implying to them, I've only done it once, because all 3 clips look the same. So that's why if you're watching a great speaker's reel, you'll notice that they jump around and show themselves, sometimes even during the same story. Here's me on stage at this conference, and here's me on stage. Part of that is just communicating, I do this all the time, and I am amazing at this, and here's a couple of different versions of me doing it. It helps the flow of the video. So you want multiple locations, you want multiple, attire changes to communicate, this is something I do regularly and I'm great at it.
Those are so good. And, it's easy to make long videos. It's hard to make short ones. And so making sure that's just a key part of that. And I love just all the assets that you talk about. I think people forget of how important it is. I say this all the time. It's I love your headshot. Who is that? Who is that? Who is that? It's I want to be able to.
You in college.
I want to be able to recognize you when I go find you online. And I'm wait, is this the same person? I don't know. Did I type the name in wrong? So I think those things really do matter. And it shows that there's care and attention to detail. So I know that we are already over time, but there's one last question, because I think this is really important, and you can answer this as succinctly as you can or you want to. But we talked about content, categorically speaking, assets. Again, barrier to entries. You've got to be phenomenal, both on content and on stage. But at the end of the day, what does it take for someone to be a great candidate to work with a speakers bureau like Premier? Like, what are you guys looking for?
Yep. Great quality professional speakers, the stuff that we've touched on multiple times. The two most frequent ways I get that question a lot. I have a lot of friends who are speakers. Honestly, I have a lot of friends who are speakers that we don't represent because we aren't the best home for them. But the two best ways to connect with Premier Speakers Bureau or any speakers bureau at this point is referral from one of their key speakers. We have, out of those 2,000 events last year, we probably booked about 650 speakers. So a lot of those speakers we booked a couple of times. There were probably 20 speakers that we booked many, many times. We have a couple speakers that we booked 70 and 80 times in that 1 year, right? So when one of those speakers texts me and says, hey, I've gotten to know this person, or I saw this person speak, they are amazing. That moves the needle for me because I know what their litmus test for great is. And so that's a great way to open a door. The last two speakers that Premier has signed exclusively, and we could unpack that another time, which means all of their business comes to Premier, have been started as referrals from other people that are trusted speakers of ours. So it's proven to be the case. The other way is to take business away from a speakers bureau. So we have that core client base that I told you that most often we know like they're going to come back to us because we serve them really well. We take great care of them. We answer the phone the first time it rings. We are good at that. When we talk to them and they say, hey, actually, thanks, I'll talk to you in a month and we'll do business together. But my CEO saw this person speak and told me to go book them. And I did that. That happens once. Okay, that's how life works. And CEOs say, go book a speaker. And they know it's risky, but the CEO told them to do it. When that happens 3 or 4 times, that alerts us to that speaker is attractive to the types of clients that we work with, right? So that quite often we will start a conversation with them. And many times over the last 23 years, that has ended up in a very strategic, long-term, mutually beneficial relationship. But it started with them proving themselves by the way they proved it was they took business away from us, meaning clients that we value said, yeah, that's somebody that we're interested in. Most often those two things connect up. Yeah. And a speaker we trust says, this person's great. And we go, yeah, we've heard that from clients too. At that point, it's almost a no-brainer. But I wish that the easy answer was press this button and this thing will happen. All of those things are nuanced, and they all come down to relationships. Being great on stage is the starting point. Event planners being in love with how you do your business. Yeah. If you're a great speaker and are a pain to work with, you won't make it. You won't make it. You have to approach your business with a servant heart. Like, I am coming to offer something to the people in this room, starting with that poor event planner, Stacy, who's probably a mom of 2 kids and has 3 other jobs and is rolling the dice on this event. And if something goes wrong, she takes all the blame. She's your first customer. Like, make her life amazing. Take great care of her. You're going to be amazing on stage. But if you do that 100 times, the universe will love you. The market will love you. There's no easy answers. There's no easy fixes. It is just hard work. AJ, you know this. You and Rory did this. It's hard work. You build a thing over time. And if you do it the right way, you look back in 10, 20 years and say, I'm proud of the things that I built.
Amen. Preach it. I love that. And like the underlying message that I hope everyone heard is like a part of the path of working with bureaus is that you actually already have to be on stages, right? Their job is to get you on the first stage or the 10th stage. Their job is to discover you after you've already been doing this long enough and good enough that other people are willing to tell other people about you, which means that it starts with you. It starts with
Perfectly you. Said. Perfectly
and you've got to be the one to get on stages. And it's like back to everything in life. It's a trusted source referring someone is how business
Right.
is still done, regardless of how many things have gone online and how business has evolved. That has never changed, which is the power of a trusted referral. And this is no different here. Shawn, thank
Perfectly
you
said.
so much.
You're the best.
This is
Good
so
to see you.
cool. And this is going to be just so rich for everyone who takes the time to listen to it. And for those of you who are listening, if you guys want to connect with Shawn, it's Shawn Hanks. You can find him on LinkedIn. But if you want to learn more about Shawn and his role and everyone else at Premier Speakers, just go to premierspeakers.com. And again, premierspeakers.com. I'll put all of that in the show notes. And if you want to catch the recap episode of this, then stay tuned. And if not, we'll catch you next time on the Influential Personal Brand. We'll see you later.
Thank you.